What's up, everybody? RLTK podcast. Jordan here, chilling with my boy Chris. Chris, what is good,
What's up, big dog?
bro?
How you doing,
Chilling.
man?
I'm good, bro. You know what I mean? Got me a
Yeah.
Celsius. Shout out to the homie Vince, who drinks 10 Celsius a day. The dude's crazy. Anyways,
10
I thought I'd drink a
Celsius a
Celsius
day?
today. He doesn't drink that many, but he drinks a lot.
What is
It's
Celsius?
it's like this, those sports caffeine drink things. Zero
Okay.
sugar. I thought about getting some coffee before we started, and then I was like, you know what? I'll just drink a
Mhm.
Celsius. It's whatever. I want some.
Well, look, shout out to my coffee drinkers. You know,
Facts, big facts. You know I love some coffee, Chris. You know that.
make you feel better.
True. Makes everything better, bro. Just a fact.
Heck yeah.
Straight fact. But listen,
Mhm.
what are we getting in today, bro? What are we getting into?
I think we're gonna get into an old topic, the fan favorite of the church, evangelism.
Okay. All right.
Preaching the gospel, man.
Okay.
Something that is interesting because it's the good news, right? And we have to break that down to a degree. You know, the idea of this news is good. Like, if you
Yeah.
really think about the depths of what we think good is philosophically, it's more profound than we think it is. This news is not just any other news that you get on CNN or NBC. No, this news is above all news.
Mhm.
It's the good news. And what is it good for? It's good for the soul. And what does it offer? It offers a place of salvation, rescuing, right? Redeeming, place where grace is found. And so it's the gospel is so much in depth. It's so much meaning into it because it implies all those things, the things that we look for in the world, the things that we try to find in the world, paradise, heaven, security, friendship, community, right? Like all these things we look for, the gospel says it has. And so you can find it there. And
Looks good.
God he is the ultimate community, right? He is the one that created this idea called community. He created the concept community. And in him you can find these things. So like we're communicating this. You know what I'm saying? Like we're communicating this deep understanding of this good news. And so we want to hop in evangelism and talk about how can we spread this word? How can we communicate this word to the world, to the people? And so
Bro, I'm
I
thinking
want to talk
about you just said good news. And
about
like even one thing that I think is really important concerning this is like even when we understand why the term good news was used historically. So like if we go back to the
yes.
time that the gospel was actually beginning to be spread in the way that we understand it today.
Yep.
Or like in the way that it was understood that back then. Let me say it that way.
Mhm.
Good news was something that messengers would say when they came to a city concerning a message from the Caesar. Good news, Caesar,
Yeah.
blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
And so now you have Christians going around saying good news, the gospel of Jesus Christ. So like
that's
it
good.
was intentionally in complete opposition to the powers that be of the day. And those powers, like, I mean, people looked at Caesar as if he was God, right?
Yeah.
And so like it was this clear, like, no, Jesus is God. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so even when you think about like some of the words that are used in the gospel story in its cultural context, it becomes even more potent and powerful.
Yeah.
Because like the gospel, is opposed to every principality, every power, every political structure that like pleads or asks for your complete allegiance. The gospel says no. Your complete allegiance is first and foremost to Jesus. And anything that comes up and opposes that, we resist. Do you get what I'm saying? And we say no to, even if that means death. Like that's how serious it is. You get what I'm saying? And so, even when I hear you say good news, like the context of what good news meant then when it was said brings like way more potency and power to even that term being used. Do you get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. I do. That's real good. And then that's why we got to hop into this conversation, especially today, right? What
Mm-hmm.
is
Yeah,
what
we
is the
do.
world? This is interesting, right? What is the world saying? This is the good news, right? Who is the Caesar
That's
of
good.
today, right? Who is the
Mm.
Caesar of the modern era? And what is the Christian battle with that for? What are we
Mm-hmm.
fighting against, right? And so,
Bro, you want to answer that question? Like you asking, like, and I'm ready to answer. Is that a question?
yeah, you can you can you can start, man. Go. You
Okay,
got it.
bet. I mean, I think we've kind of talked about some of these things before, right? And we
Mm,
could kind of like we could use different words to describe them, whether it be the Caesar of this age, the God of
mm,
this age, right? Or the gods. Like
yeah.
whatever other things that are calling people to worship them, to or
Mm,
to, make this thing the central thing in your life that you order and shape your life around. Like
mm,
that would be a God, that would be a Caesar, right? That would be a
yeah.
Lord over your
Yep.
life, so to speak. And so, like, we know what those things are. I think, like, postmodernism, right? This
Yeah.
idea of like worshiping self,
Mm,
finding fulfillment and telos and understanding in self and in what you want and
yeah.
what you feel and what you think, right? And then imposing
Mm,
that on reality. I think that's one thing, right? I think
yep.
another thing is like, obviously, particularly in the West, like sex, bro, like just the sexualization of
Yeah.
culture and this idea that like that fulfillment can be found in this like seeking of pleasure with the senses. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
I think that's another thing for sure. Money, like
Yeah.
money absolutely is shaping everything. And I think like the more I think about it, the more I feel like money might be one of the biggest gods. And I think the reason for that is it shapes us in ways that we understand and in ways that we don't understand. And maybe that's true for the other things too. But I
Mm,
see those things more clearly with money for sure, like the way it's ordering and shaping life and ordering and
yeah.
shaping us in ways that we understand and don't understand because we haven't even perceived or thought about them.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, yeah, like I feel like those are three things that just jump out to me as like gods of our age, so to speak,
Yeah.
that are like calling people to worship them. Um,
Mm,
and like people are intentionally and unintentionally worshiping those things.
yeah.
Um, and being shaped by those things in ways that they're not necessarily comprehending. And I get it. Like we're just in the water that we swim in, right?
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah.
I do like what you said about the worship of self. Um,
And by the
which
way, before you continue, I want to say this. Sorry, I
yeah.
didn't want to cut you off, but I want to
No,
say
you
this.
good.
Like
You good. Yeah. Yeah.
Christians are being shaped by these things too. It's not just like, oh, if you're
Hmm.
not a believer in Jesus, you're not being shaped by. No, you're absolutely being shaped by these things in
Yeah.
ways that you understand and in ways that you don't understand. I'm being shaped by these things. So are you.
Yep.
So anybody
Yep.
who's listening is being shaped by these things in ways they understand and don't understand, whether you would call yourself a follower of Christ or not,
Yeah.
right? And so what we're
Mm,
trying to get at is this idea of like, well, we need to like do our best to perceive how these things are shaping us and then resist
mm,
that for the sake of the gospel. You know what I'm saying?
yeah. I agree. I agree. And just to double down on that a little bit further, let's go a little bit further with this idea of worshiping the self, right? Worshiping this perceived identity that you think you have, right? We tell the social media says to people, no, you shouldn't learn how to love yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Learn how to love yourself. And like, I really don't know what that actually means because that love can quickly turn into worshiping yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because what is, again, podcast before, love is a principle. It's not some emotion that you have. It's not something that not just like these eternal emotions that you just hold on dear to that you want to have. Love is a
Mm-hmm.
principle. It's a moral
Mm-hmm.
principle.
Mm-hmm.
And if we all can agree that in our existence, morality is corrupt, and if it's corrupt, our perception of good is corrupt. So how can we know how to love ourselves well? You know? And so it's very hard
Stop it,
to
Chris.
but it's very hard to know how to love yourself. And this is why I want to get into this idea, and what I think is I think it just adds to what you was already said, but I think the idea of self-government, self-governing yourself is something to say about how we're not good at self-governing ourselves, right? We're
Mm.
not good at that. Because what does that mean to govern yourself? If you want to love yourself, right? Loving yourself is this particular standard and principle that you stand on that you want other people to treat you as, or you treat yourself as, you know. We don't do that well because if you're governing yourself, you're protecting yourself from something, but you're also guiding yourself somewhere else,
Mm.
you know? And so if you're loving yourself and governing yourself, where are you taking yourself? You
Mm.
know, where are you leading yourself?
And
And
how
what are
would you
you
even know where to go?
exactly? And what are you protecting yourself from? And
Mm.
so it's this idea of loving yourself turns into worshiping yourself. And I think that is one of the Caesars of today, or however you want to label it. And so I think like, and this is against the gospel, you know, and I understand that the gospel, you know, says to love your neighbor as you love yourself, but but um first we have to love God first,
Hmm.
right? We have to learn how to love him, because in return we can love other people, and then we can properly love ourselves. And so I think like even hopping in this conversation of like even now this can be considered evangelism, preaching the gospel, you know, like when you really think about um your existence and where you're going and how you feel, you got to consider, where is God in all this? Where does he place in all these things? And that's what I wanted to get at with the gospel. And so like to go back a little bit, I want to talk about our story, how we got here. Because we started on a college campus before we hopped into on the YouTube scene, and before we started Reframe and Real Talk started on the college campus.
Hmm.
And I was thinking about like when we first got saved, we was giving people to work. You know what I'm talking about?
Facts.
Like we was,
Everybody getting that gospel.
bro,
Yo, if
everybody.
you die tomorrow, where you going? You know what I'm
Bro,
saying?
like, for real, like we was, bro, it was that 116, man. No shame, bro. We going in, man. This is the truth. This is
Facts.
what it is, right? And so,
Hmm.
like, I remember we used to hold these real talk conversations in auditoriums or in classrooms, and we'll have a topic like what we're doing on the YouTube. We did it in the public scene. You know, it'll be
Yeah.
like 20, 30, 40 students on the college campus, and we'll bring them all in. We'll have pizza or something like that, and then we'll just have a topic, and we'll just ask questions and let the discussion go throughout uh, the whole scene, the whole event. And at the end, we'll share what the scripture says about this particular topic. And it's just like,
Bro, I just totally thought about this. You remember when we used to like plant people from other campuses in the crowd to say
yeah,
crazy stuff?
yeah, cool. Yep.
So like somebody would come from another school and start
Mm,
saying wild stuff. So then
yep.
other people would say wild stuff. Because the
Yeah.
reality is you knew people wanted to say that stuff. They just didn't feel comfortable. So we'd
Yep.
have somebody else say it. So like other
Yep.
people would be like, okay, bet, say less. Now I know
Yep.
I can say it because somebody else thinks it about it.
Mm,
Bro, some of those conversations got wild, bro.
yeah, it's true. It got crazy. And like, it's crazy, like just talking about the college campuses. Like, I wonder how it will be today, knowing how the college campuses is today. I wonder what would preaching the gospel be like on the college campus today. Like, because
I think it would be what we do in high schools, bro. Like honestly.
mm, mm,
I think it'd just be way more conversational. I think it'd be pretty individualized, you know? Like I feel
mm,
like people like are very individualistic and relativistic. So and
mm,
I think people are like, especially young people, I feel like sometimes they're what's the word I'm looking for? They're like obstinate to be obstinate.
mm,
You know what I'm saying? So they're like,
yeah,
oh, I don't
yeah,
believe that. I don't think that's true. This
yeah,
is wrong. That's wrong. You know what I'm saying?
hmm,
Like pick at the things you have to say for the sake of picking at the things you have to say, not
yeah,
for the sake of like discovering what truth is.
yeah,
But I mean, for them, like truth isn't necessarily even a thing, right?
Mm.
It's like live your truth, right? Like everything
Yeah.
is like about whatever you think and whatever you feel. So I feel like it would be a lot of that. Um,
Mm.
Maybe on a little bit more of the intellectual level than a high school.
Yeah.
Because, I think high schools is way more emotive and stuff. Not, well, I mean, I would say Gen Z is pretty emotive in general. So it might actually be just as emotive, but maybe a little bit
Mm.
like more well thought out, maybe. I don't
Yeah.
know. Or maybe
Mm.
they'd have more words to say concerning how they feel,
Yeah.
be more processed. Yeah, it's an
Mm.
interesting question.
Yeah, it is. And it's interesting to me because I see the transition to when we was in college to college today. It seems as though the world itself is calling the church to the idea of reason, right? If you want to preach this good news to me, I need you to explain this a little bit better. Like, what do
Mm,
you mean by what do you mean
yeah.
that Christ died and rose? What do you
Well,
mean by salvation? Like, what do you think I need saving from? Like,
yeah.
you know what I'm saying? That's
hmm
why I want to talk about our story because the transition is now different.
And I think the reason for that, like the reason why young people are like, what do you mean?
Mm.
Is because we live in a postmodern era now. And so, like,
Yeah.
we can't make the same assumptions concerning the scriptures that we could before, right? Like, people
Yep.
don't understand Christianity the way they did 10, 15 years ago. Like,
Yeah.
Jesus, who's that? The
Yeah.
Bible? Yeah, I've
Yep.
heard of that. I've never read it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
or like, what is that? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And like
Mm-hmm.
when we were in college or when we were in high school, like
Mm-hmm.
people knew that stuff. They'd read it before, they'd prayed before. Like
Yep.
a lot of these kids ain't done none of that. So they're like, who?
Yeah.
What?
Yep. Yep.
Jesus? God? What are you talking about?
Yep.
Bible? What is that?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And
Yep.
so
I do.
now you have to explain yourself because like you can't make the same assumptions. And like,
Yep.
let's be real, making those assumptions was bad back then too. We should have explained the same way we're explaining now. We shouldn't have
Yep.
made assumptions, right?
Yep.
Because
Agree.
like we actually need to know what it is they understand. What do you mean? What do you think I mean when I say church? What do you think I mean when I say gospel? What do you
Mm.
think I mean when I say Jesus? Like those are things that are important things to clarify. Because like
Yep.
some people might have the wrong ideas about those things. Some people might have
Mm.
the right ideas, but knowing where they're actually at helps you like define how you want to communicate like the gospel to them.
Mm.
But now, like kids don't know nothing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so it's like
I
you're starting
agree.
from square one, which actually I think is dope.
Mhm.
Because they're not coming in with any baggage or preconceived notions
Yeah.
about
An
like
actual
what it
open
is you're
mind.
communicating to them. Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, maybe they have an open mind,
Yeah.
um, but
Depending
yeah,
on the
they're not coming in with all that
level.
baggage. hmm Yeah.
It's true. No, I
hmm
agree. And I think this is what's interesting is that like which drives into the next question is what do you think the church in the West particularly is miscommunicating about the gospel?
Everything.
Okay.
No, I'm just playing.
Yeah.
Um, if I was gonna pick one thing, which might turn into 10 once I start talking,
Yeah.
um, I would pick like how narrow we've made the gospel.
Mm.
And so
Okay.
like we've made the gospel about Jesus saving sinners from their sins so you get to go to this place called heaven. Jesus came to earth, died on this cross.
Mm.
The Your sins were poured out on Jesus, and if you accept Jesus' sacrifice on your behalf, he takes your sin, you get his righteousness, and then you live on earth until you go to this place called heaven.
Yeah.
And that
Mm.
is just like a very narrow, stripped down uh, linear way to understand Christianity. Like
Mm.
the gospel is about God's plan to reconcile the world to himself in Christ, that
Mm.
he is redeeming the cosmos, the universe. Christianity, the gospel is, my contention is this: it is the best way to understand reality.
Mm.
It's not just some religious jargon that people who are weak and need something to believe in put their faith in. I think it is the best way to understand existence. I don't think there's
Yes,
a better explanation for existence than the gospel.
I
That's
agree.
how big it is. That's
Yeah,
how grand it is.
yeah,
Right. And so that, I think those are the terms we need to use to explain it. And I think what we're doing is we're selling the gospel short, and we're selling the people short that we're communicating it to when
yeah,
we just tell them it is, hey, you're going to this place called hell. And if you don't trust in God, then like, yeah,
yeah,
sucks for you, buddy.
yeah,
But if you do, then you get to go to this place called heaven with us. Yay.
yeah.
When I think it's about way more. And I'm not saying those aren't elements in the gospel story either. I'm just
Hmm.
saying, or elements in like Christianity. I'm just saying like, yo, there's way more to it than
Yeah,
that.
I agree.
And I think that grander story, like when we enter into it, the question then becomes like, well, how do we live now in light of that story? Like what is God doing in us? What is God doing with our lives? And how do we live in a way that brings about this like intent that God has for existence, like this redemption, if you will, right?
Yeah.
As we would put it.
Mm.
That I think is one of the major problems with the way that we communicate the gospel in the West.
Yeah.
Because then what I think the issue is like it doesn't affect every area of your life the way it's supposed to. It doesn't
Mm.
affect how you spend money. It doesn't affect how you treat your family. It doesn't affect what kind of job you work. It doesn't affect how you behave at your job. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't like it should affect all of those.
Yeah, I
But when we
agree.
communicate a narrow gospel, we just say, hey, you have this private religious thing over here that you don't necessarily have to talk about. You don't necessarily have to share with anybody. You don't necessarily have to live in a way that would communicate to anybody around you there's something different about it,
Mm.
which is opposite to what I think the gospel actually says.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and that's good. And but also like to point out, like, you know, and it's not like this what they're saying is wrong to a degree, like it's objectively true, right? There is a truth in the fact that there is a heaven, there is a hell, there is something that you have to apply your faith to and put your trust in. There is a truth in the sense of there is no escape from this existence, um, and the consequences that's coming to it. I think that one thing as you was talking, what pointed out to me is that who agrees with what you just said, and I think the ones who agree with what you say are the ones that are suffering, right? The ones who are, the people that are forgotten, the people that are poor, like the slaves, like in a sense of they can gravitate to this idea way more than those who possess a lot of things in the world. Like
Mm,
you have a lot of these possessions of the world. When you say that to me, it's like, do I really need rescuing? What do you think I need
mm,
rescuing from? And I think it was Carl Jung that said that the reason why people can't see God is because they don't look deep enough, right?
mm,
Like one of the things that the enemy does very well is that he keeps you from reflecting on the deepness of life. If he can keep you from distractions of how corrupt you really are, there is no point and there is no way that you can see that you need a savior. You know what I'm
mm,
saying? And
mm,
so I think what's interesting is that because that narrative is is correct, but I think there's a specific group of people that can just agree with that because they actually need to be rescued because they're suffering in life, bro. It's like I need that, man. Nothing's going my way. I'm a slave to this system. I never had
mm,
anything in my life.
mm.
I'm nothing, bro. So when you preach that narrative, it captures the heart. But
Yeah.
but also, and I think it was Rene Descartes that talked about this. Like when he talked to the French theologians, he said the way you reach these people that don't want to listen is that you reach them by reason. You know, it's like there is something about the human mind that wants to understand particular things. And so sometimes when I'm out, in the world or when I'm observing it or whatever, I feel it's like there is a sorrowness in my heart, bro. It's like there is no judgment, because I can see that people are looking for answers. People are trying to find contentment. They're trying to cope. They're trying to heal in any other way they're trying to heal. And it's like, how can I communicate this gospel to them that they can really see that there is actual healing in Christ, and there is not just healing, but there's you can be preserved. You can be saved, really. And and the world has questions, bro. you know they got things they want to understand, because that narrative you talked about can only go so far. Because there's a theological stance, there's the philosophical stance, there's the psychological part of it, or the biology part of it. There is the scientific part of it. Like the world has questions to what we're preaching to them. And I think what they're struggling with, and also, I mean, I find this evident even in our own lives, is faith. It's like, how can you tell me to have faith in this? Like, explain this to me, And a part of that, bro, a part of that is God just has to intervene, like He intervened in our life. You know what I'm saying? Like, we was
Facts.
going about our day, pursuing whatever we was pursuing, sinning and whatever, and then God was just wrecked. He wrecked our lives. Like, He knocked on. He said, "Here I am. Let's chop real quick." You know what I'm saying? And so it's like, a part of it is just like God just going to have to intervene in these people's lives. But also, Scripture says we're co-workers. And so what does that mean for us to be a co-worker with God? And I think He calls us to preach the good news, which applies faith. And so a part of it is calling people to have faith in this news. And I think that, and it's hard to do that, bro. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to apply faith in an external world that is so influential, you know?
Well, I
And
think we got to communicate to people the rationality of faith, right? Like faith is actually pretty rational.
it's,
And I would
yes, it's the
argue that
most
all of
rationalist
us
thing
would
you
have
can do.
faith. All of
Yes.
us are religious, right?
Yes.
And
It's nature. Yep.
we all have rituals.
Yep.
We all have things that we do consistently that we believe are going to produce a certain outcome or move us towards a
Absolutely.
certain direction. Like if we make something our God, let's say like I make the end of my life to tell us that, like what I'm made for is to become, I don't know, the richest man alive, right?
Mm,
Then I'm going to order and shape my life in a way that moves me towards that end. And those are the rituals that I perform in order to
mm,
achieve what I think is going to bring me ultimate satisfaction and contentment in life, right?
mm.
And so, in that sense, I'm religious,
Yeah.
right? I'm worshiping a thing
Yep.
and believing that that thing is going to give me what I ultimately need as a human being.
Yeah.
And I have faith that once I get there, right? Because I don't actually know,
Yep.
have faith, I trust that
Mm,
once I actually get there, I'm going to get what it is that I think I'm going to get. I
yeah.
go to school and I trust that my teachers are not giving me misinformation,
Mm,
right?
yep.
I read books and I trust that the things in those books are correct. Like, who told you
Mm,
that? I'm
mm,
sitting in a chair. I trust that that chair is not going to fall to pieces. Who told
yep.
me it wasn't going to? Right? So, like, there's just a bunch of assumptions that we make by faith, right? That's the only way
Yep.
we can really actually make that. Like, how else would we make it? We're just assuming that they're true. We're assuming that certain things are just going to happen,
Yeah.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, like, I would say faith is a necessary component of existing. And so it just becomes a question of, like, what do you have faith in?
Mm,
Not so much whether you have faith or not. Because we're
mm,
not, like, we're not actually absolutely certain about anything, right?
yeah.
We
Yeah.
can't be. Like, it would actually be irrational to say, like, okay, I'm certain about this thing. Right? You can't
Mm,
possibly know. You didn't create it. You didn't design it. You see what I
mm,
mean?
yeah.
So, uh, so yeah, I think like explaining to people the rationality of faith, I think is helpful.
Mm.
But it's interesting though, because I think about Gen Z, think about young people.
Yeah.
So I feel like our generation, like millennials and maybe older, but definitely millennials, we were wrapped up in the why questions and the rationality, like apologetics, like, why does the Bible say this? Why should I trust the Bible? Why is Jesus the God I should, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And I feel like Gen Z is more wrapped up in questions of care than questions of rationality.
Mm.
And I think when you get down to the brass tacks of it, it's like, do you love me? Does your God love me?
Mm.
Does your God love my friend? Right?
Yeah.
I think those are the questions that they're asking. I think part of that too, like then ties into like the more difficult conversations about LGBTQ stuff, gender and
Mm.
sexuality, because they'll abandon institutions, they'll abandon ideas for the sake of the relationships they have with people that they love and trust, right, and that they're close to.
Yeah.
Uh, which I think means we need to lean into the nearness, the relational nature of who God is, the incarnation, God's
Mm.
understanding of our suffering, and not just understanding because he's God, but because he actually suffered as a human, right? Uh,
Mm.
I think leaning into those parts of the Godhead is going to speak to this generation in the way that they need to be spoken to.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think me and you was talking about this earlier this morning about the internal and the external, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And what I see with Gen Z is that they measure their internal with the external world. And it's very misleading and misguiding because the external world is very absurd and there's no
Yes, it
order.
is.
There's no order. There is no consistency, right? There is no contentment in the external world. Almost to a degree, there is no rules in the
Mm,
external world. And so if we measure the internal self with the external, then there is no rule within ourselves. I think that's why
mm,
we see the people act the way they're acting. They're hard to reason with, or they're very sensitive, or they get angry quickly. The tribalism gets into play, like all these things that plays a part in how we perceive ourselves. We
mhm,
get it from the world, right? We was talking about identity a couple podcasts back. It's like we gather resources from the world to create an image that we want it to be for
mm,
ourselves. And I think and I think you said it right. It's like this is what's beautiful about the gospel, bro, and what Jesus did, right? God came to walk on the earth, not just um to die on the cross and be rose in 3 days, and not just to fulfill the law because man could not, but also to be an external image of consistency.
mm,
Um, and that's how we should measure ourselves. We measure the internal by off what Christ did. And when I look at Gen Z, we have to be able to explain that to them in the sense of, they have inconsistencies in their own self. How, some of them may think that everything that they do is wrong, like there is no meaning, like all these things is like this idea that there is no truth. It's like God came into the external world to show us how to live internally.
mm,
And I think that is something that Gen Z is missing. This is what the gospel provides, right? So when Gen Z is struggling with identity, when they're struggling with self, right, we have to point to what Christ did. And here's the interesting part, bro. It's the reason why this is a hard thing is because we want to be in control of the outcomes of our life. We want to be in control of that, right? When people say, I want to take control of my life, I want to do what I want, they want to be in control of the outcome of their life. They want to determine the outcome of their life. But again, the external world can't give you that because the external world is very inconsistent. And so the outcome that you desire will never come to you. You understand? So what is the outcome that we should want? The outcome that we should desire is the outcome of the heart, the human heart. Because you can do good in the world, you can be loving and loyal and kind, and people will strike you for that. People will kill you for that. People will try to harm you for that. And so the outcome that you look for in the external world won't be given to you. Christ came to give us an internal outcome of the heart, to save the heart, to redeem the heart, redeem it back to the attributes in the natural creation of God. Like he is this is why he's the answer, bro. This is why he's important. This is why he's essential, because the world cannot reward wisdom. You can be wise and walk in it, but it won't reward you externally, but it can reward you internally. And that's what matters the most, right? What does it say that it talks about like God, how God, what did he say to Samuel? Like man looks on the outwardly, but God looks in the heart.
Yep.
Right. And so the kindness and the love that Gen Z is looking for, and the love that they want to receive, and the love that they want to express, and the reward for the love that they want to express is found in Christ, because the world can't give it to you, you know? And this is why the gospel is important, because the reward that you're looking for, Christ offers, you know? And I think that leads to a greater and more deeper conversation of how we're designed for a reward and things of that nature. But we have to do better at communicating the gospel, man, because it's not just a message, it's a rescuing message for the lost. The loss of what? Like, even that, like, what do you mean by lost? You know, like what are we losing? What have we lost? Right? We have lost. One thing I can say that we have lost the knowledge of the attributes of God, the things that are in us, right? Like, we are image bearers. What do you mean? What I mean is that we're not clever enough as humans to create something called image. We're copiers of something. And we see it in the world because we adopt images of the external world, right? We adopt it. You know, whatever you like, whatever you're addicted to, whatever you find pleasure in, you take on that identity. So if that is true in the external world, how greater is it with God, who you actually bear his image? And without him, you couldn't even be something. You understand? And so, like, this stuff points deeper. And this is what we mean by redempting, being redeemed, being saved, lost, wicked. Like, these words have meaning. These are not words to offend you. These are words to point out the fact that we are so off track with what is good in life and what is right, that we're lost. This is what we mean. And the gospel is the bridge to understanding what is actually good and right. And ultimately, it calls you to have faith. You access these things through faith, not through works, not through deeds. Faith comes first, then your works. That's how it goes. That's the order. And so when you think about evangelism, bro, when you're out here talking to people, what is something that you have observed when you're out here sharing the gospel or talking to people about God, especially Gen Zers? And I know you talked about how they was, talking about love and does God love my friends, things like that. Is that's mostly what you experience when you're out there sharing the good news?
Yeah, I think young people are really arrested with the relationships that they have with their friends. And then I think the other thing too is like they do want practical insight, wisdom, mentorship. They didn't want people to come alongside them. Like, bro, I was just on campus today having a conversation. By the way, I got to connect you with this kid. This
Okay.
fool's reading Dostoevsky, bro.
Yes.
I'm like, bruh,
Yes.
you're reading
Yeah.
Dostoevsky? Like, excuse me?
Yes, sir.
He's like, yeah, bro, I'm into like
Yes.
philosophy from like the 1800s. He's like, I'm
Yes.
not into modern philosophy. I'm like, okay, say less. So if I give you some philosophers, are you willing to like read the stuff? He's like, yeah.
Yep.
And so it's
Good.
like, but even that, like the pursuit of knowledge in that way and understanding in that way. And like it all started because he came in and Dawit, shout out to Dawit, asked him like, yo, how you doing? He was like,
Mhm.
I'm feeling melancholy. He's like, hold on. Like melancholy, bro? Like nobody uses that word. Like, why are you using the word melancholy? And then they
Yeah.
get into this whole conversation about philosophy and
Mhm.
philosophers, and he pulls out the Dostoevsky book. And it's like,
Yeah.
yo, that's crazy. But I think
Mm.
that's like that points to the deepness of the young people and they're like also their quest, like they're searching, bro.
Yeah,
They're
they are.
searching and they do want guidance. They want people to come alongside them that they can love and trust, they can help show them the way.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, bro, like people like getting master's degrees and stuff like are reading that stuff or allowing themselves to be shaped by those types of ideas. Like not a
Mm.
junior in high school. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And so yeah, man, I think that kind of epitomizes in my mind like the experiences that I'm having with young people. Uh,
Mm.
and then like just the yeah, once again the uniqueness of I think how things need to be communicated, like learning who that young person is, building a relationship with them, and sharing the gospel in a way that makes sense to them. Because the
Yeah.
way that I would share with that kid is pretty unique, right? Based on the type of person he is and the way that he's understanding the world,
Mm.
and maybe walking down that path with him that he's going down right now in terms of like philosophy and kind of some of the conversations that we've been having about like where does philosophy lead us, you know?
Mm.
So yeah, man, I think it's relational. I think it's particular, specific. I think there's like this. You have to get to know them. Like
Yeah. It's true.
I think that like
That's work.
it's yeah, it is, and it's like getting harder to communicate the gospel. What I mean by that, it's like you got to work harder. Like before, you could just get out there, say a bunch of stuff, and a bunch of people might hear and respond once again because they have all these assumptions and
Mm.
they know what you're talking about. Like these kids have no clue, bro. So like
Yeah.
there's got to be these in-depth conversations first, kind of establishing a framework, understanding terms, like understanding where they're at, them understanding where you're at, meeting in the middle, and then actually like beginning to have discourse about some of these ideas, so that you can
Mm.
kind of clearly communicate it in a way that they understand, that
Yeah.
can move them towards faith,
Mm.
or faith in Jesus, should I say?
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say those are some of the things that uh, I'm noticing right now.
Yeah. I, and before we move to the next question, I think this, like, I don't think they really, well, I say this is like, because you said earlier that the church is also being shaped in this way too in the postmodern era. I think this is a challenge for the church because we are commanded to look different,
Mm-hmm.
but we're also commanded, yeah, we're commanded to look different, and it seems like there's a complication there, you know, because we want to be influential, but we also want to look different, you know, and it's complicated because us looking different to a degree means we're not going to be liked. And that
Yes.
also means that family members are not going to like us either. It
Yes.
also means that people are not going to follow us on social media.
Mm-hmm.
Friends will, disown us, right? Like there's a particular truth that the church holds that is going to divide the world, whether we like it or not. And regardless of any explanation, regardless of any point that you make, and regardless of any historical evidence of what the church did in the past, at the end of the day, the truth that we hold, and I feel it sometimes, like the truth that we hold is going to create enemies. And
Yes.
I think this is part of the cost of sharing the gospel, evangelizing, is because it is light. It shines light. It convicts. It also condemns. It. Let me not say that. How do I say that? I don't want to say condemn. It doesn't condemn. It makes you feel the weight of your ways,
Mm.
and it causes you to contemplate that. And that's heavy for a human being because we want to do what we want.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a reason why we hate judgment, bro. It's not just because people are mean. It's a reason why we despise judgment. We don't want it. We can't stand it. It is a reason why our nature can't handle judgment. To some degree, the gospel it feels that way. It makes you feel that way. But what you're feeling is the weight of your ways. And I think we have to
That's good, bro.
discuss that. I think we have to discuss that when it comes to sharing the good news, sharing the gospel. Something that we have to be prepared for is that, you know, um, because this is not light. This is heavy. Because like you said, this is the existence. This is not waking up in the morning, making you some coffee, going to work, getting dinner. This is about your existence. Like when you question, why do I exist? The gospel is at that level. It's going to the level of existing. And that's heavy, bro. And something we have to consider when we're out here preaching the gospel is, and that's why we have to have mercy for the world. That's why we have to have grace for them, bro. It's not like, man, people out here searching and looking and trying to cope and heal. Like, what do you
Yep.
mean, And so,
I mean, when you look at the life of Jesus, you see somebody who met people in that. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Like he didn't come out here and just be crushing people.
yeah,
People that he met in pain, in circumstances that they were in because their life, you know, had gone a particular direction or whatever. He met those people with love and care and concern. And he would
mm,
tell them, like, your sins forgiven, like, stop sinning. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Go
yeah,
live a different life.
yeah,
Uh, but he met them.
mm,
And I think it's interesting that he responded to the religious leaders of the day the way he did.
mm,
It wasn't the people out there that were the sinners, so to speak. It was the people out there that claimed to know the truth that was
mm,
constantly getting two-piece.
yeah,
Um, and I
mm,
think obviously because of the way that they were conducting themselves, right, it just was in power into control. And obviously, I think like that's a message to the church, and that's a message to Christians today, right? Like it can't be
mm,
about controlling, it can't be about having power. It has to be about love and
mm,
care and mercy and being present with people and telling them about God that loves them and that loves existence and has a plan to redeem
yeah,
everything, which includes
mm,
their life. And that by faith they can have access to that right now.
mm,
And so yeah, bro, that's good.
yeah.
I don't think you should ask me another question. I
Oh,
think we should just probably do a part two. That's probably what should happen.
that's fair. But I do want to say this before we land the plane. Let me at least say to the church, if you are a believer, be encouraged. You
Mm-hmm.
know, share the good news, man. Um,
Yep.
develop relationships with people and meet them where they are because Christ met us where we are. you know, and be encouraged, man. They're don't mistake their anger for don't mistake their anger in the sense that they don't want answers. They want answers.
Mm,
But sometimes the answers that God has given us will provoke them to anger. It will. And it's okay. Let that be a place of grace. Because I
mm,
also understand you was once angry too,
mm,
and God showed you grace.
mm.
So be encouraged. And when you see the opportunity, share it. And, don't forget what God saved you from. I just want to encourage that to people, man. And so,
That's good, bro.
yeah,
Well, like we always say, it's the beginning of the conversation. At the end, questions, comments, concerns, hit us up. You know where
yep,
to find us. There'll probably be a part 2 on this.
yes, sir.
We're lining up
Absolutely.
a ton of guests, which is going to be super exciting.
Mm,
Shout out to Sage, the admin, for handling business and getting all that stuff scheduled. We're trying
yes,
to up our
sir.
game. Excited
Mm,
to have a lot of people on here sharing a lot of different ideas and have a lot of interesting conversations. So anyways, we love you guys. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.